Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes and welcome to episode 6 of the Music Mind podcast. Today my special guest is one of the young lions of the jazz scene in Europe, the wonderful keyboard player Simon Oslender from Germany. Simon has done more in his 24 years on this earth in music than many professional musicians do across 50 or 60-year careers. He's played with some of the true living legends of jazz, performing live and recording at the highest standards. Please enjoy my conversation with Simon Oslender. We'll start by listening to a little bit of Shining Bright, one of the tracks from his 2022 Peace of Mind album release. Well, hi, Simon, and welcome to the Music Mind podcast. It's fantastic to have you as my special guest for episode 6 in the series.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on board. And I've got to do a shout out to Andrew O, who was my guest on episode 3. Andrew's one of Australia's best ever saxophone, flute and EWI players. And when I did the episode with Robin A. Smith from London, I sent Andrew a copy and he said, fantastic, I love Robin's playing. He said, my other favourite keyboard player is Simon Oslender.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Unbelievable.
So unbelievable.
That's crazy.
So Andrew's been a wonderful professional musician. And I would have never heard of you other than that recommendation. So the internet's it brings us together, but unless there's that tap on the shoulder, we can miss each other in the universe.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. He's a great friend of the podcast. So look, our audience have just heard, I started with Shining Bright, which is track 8 from your Peace of Mind album. It's a fantastic look. First of all, the whole album is fantastic. And I'd like to start by maybe just giving you the opportunity to tell us a bit about the genesis of that album. How did it come about? What were you trying to achieve? Maybe, and maybe referring initially to Shining Bright, given that people have just heard that.
That's right. Actually, that song that track was one of the first ones that I came up with. And I wasn't really planning on doing my second album for another year or so, but then the pandemic hit. Okay. And I didn't have anything to do for quite some time. And I just started writing all the time. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was writing 1 or 2 tunes every day. And at some point I had the feeling, okay, we're kind of going in the right direction here. And, better stuff is coming out. And my friend Wolfgang Haffner, who's playing drums on the record.
Yes.
We were constantly in touch. We were on the phone almost every day during that time. And I think it was maybe March or April of 2021 when I, first sent him one of my new compositions, because that was song number 5, the ballad, I Will Be There.
Okay.
And I thought maybe this could be, the start of, I wasn't thinking about doing an album, but, at least I had something that I was, quite happy with. And I sent it to him. And he just replied within 10 minutes with a, perfectly recorded drum track.
Oh,
It was, I could have just, released it right that second.
Yes.
Then we just started working on, he asked me whether I had more stuff on my hard drive. And I said, yeah, there's a couple of things,
Yes. Well, look,
And
there's a couple of
just
things I'd like to explore there already, because the first thing that hit me about that album when I downloaded it was, the quality of the compositions. So, and I noticed, I think, are all of the tracks composed by you on that album, or at least most
That's
of
right.
all of them?
That's right.
Yeah. And the second thing that hit me was the quality of the sounds. Like, that is so beautifully recorded. And you mentioned Wolfgang Haffner, is it? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Again, I've never heard of Wolfgang, but I've done a bit of research, and I sort of find out he's essentially the Steve Gadd of Germany or Europe. He's such a wonderful drummer. And again, the sounds that you are getting from your piano, your electric pianos, your organs, and the sound he's getting on that drum kit. And your other partner in crime on the Peace of Mind album is Will Lee, the bass player.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I was vaguely aware of Will here in Australia from the Letterman show. I think he was on the Late Night with Letterman show.
Yeah.
So his face was familiar, and his bass playing is beautiful. Tell us a bit about that. How did Will Lee come into the equation? Because is he still based in the USA, or was he working in Europe at the time?
He was in France at the time. He's still based in New York, but he was in Europe, during the summer of 21.
Yes.
And to me, it never seemed, even vaguely possible that I was someday going to record with him, because he was, he has always been one of my heroes,
Yes.
And all the work he did, together with Steve Gadd. And I mean, there's just too much stuff to count, to list. But Wolfgang and Will have been great friends for years. I think they've known each other since the early 90s or something like that. And as soon as Wolfgang and I had, come up with a couple tunes, and, we just arranged and we really worked pretty much, we worked on it daily on that stuff. Yeah. And we were always on the phone and, changing little details, trying to make the music really, speak the way it should in the end. And I have to say, without Wolfgang, the compositions would have never sounded, even remotely close to what they are now. And at some point, we kind of faced it. Okay, we have a couple tunes and we're really happy with all that stuff, and I think we need to make an album.
Yeah.
So of course the next question was, who's going to play on that? Who's going to play especially bass on that?
Yes.
And Will Lee instantly popped into our heads because of his just the way he plays, and he lifts everything up. And I couldn't really believe it, but Wolfie actually sent him a message asking him whether he was, he interested to do that. Yeah, absolutely. And he said yes. So that's how it happened.
And that's how
amazing.
It's amazing, mate, because I really, we're going to be playing quite a few tracks from your two albums as part of this conversation. Great. But I absolutely encourage anyone who watches this podcast or listens to it to get both of those albums, because it's just first class musicianship all the way. Like Will Lee's sound on bass is both on fretless and electric is so insane, gorgeous of itself. Yes. But I want to ask you, with the, there's some intricate arrangements, even though it's largely a trio album.
Right.
How much of that was on the fly, or how much of it was, I suppose, was any of it written out, or was it something that just as a team you just pieced together by practicing it or whatever?
Well, both, I would say. A lot of stuff was arranged beforehand. Wolfgang and I did all that, and we actually had most of the, the synth parts and the pads and the additional stuff. We already had that when we were recording. I prepared tracks that we could play to pretty much.
Okay.
So the arrangements were pretty much set.
Yes.
But then within that, we all just tried to create,
play to what you heard.
Just exactly. Just
particularly, and Wolfgang's sound on the drums. I'm sort of thinking, well, I'm actually in my mind, and again, thanks to Andrew, I'm thinking it would have been a tragedy if I never came across your music, and I thoroughly enjoyed hearing a different side of Will Lee, because I've seen him just vamping with the band on the Letterman show, but of course in amongst all of the the entertainment factor of those shows, you don't really appreciate what an amazing musician he is. So a lot of his parts are almost like single line, beautiful, they're almost classical in nature. Are you saying, did you write some of those out, or was that just free reign for Will?
No, it was just
free
him.
reign. Yeah.
Amazing. And he came into the studio and he knew the songs way better than I did. And I wrote them, he was so prepared. It was incredible,
Yes.
And he just made that stuff up on the spot. And every take he played, you could just, print it out, hang it on the wall and worship it,
Well, as I say, you're playing, and this is something for, the name of this podcast is The Music Mind. And I think this conversation is really relevant because unless Google has led me astray, are you currently 25 or turning 25, or what? How old are you?
I'm 24, turning 25 in March.
Now, Will Lee, I think, is in his 70s or approaching 70.
Just turned 70.
Yeah, right. And Wolfgang's probably in his 50s, is he? His mid-50s?
55, 56, yeah.
So I just want to pause here for a moment, because if someone listens to any track on your Peace of Mind album, and they've just heard a little bit of Shining Bright, so let's use that as an example. I don't think for $1 billion anyone would imagine the age and experience gap of the three featured players on that. Like, it just, I vaguely remember being 24. I'm 61 now, and I do remember being 24. And as a musician, I got interested in music, I think, when I was 8. And I think back to when I was 24, and I was sort of a bit like you, writing my own song. This is back in the cassette era, for me in the early 1970s. And, I was influenced by people like Tom Scott and the LA Express and, those great players like that. The thing is, when I listen to you at 24, I just hear Will, Wolfgang, and you as the one musical mind with the same level of experience and creativity. Can you talk a little bit, because I know on your website, Will and Wolfgang give you some, in good humoured nature, but they give you some amazing compliments, because they are in essence saying exactly what I'm saying, that they are amazed at your level of maturity, given the massive gap in. You've got to think like Will Lee's played music professionally for more than probably more than twice as long as you've been alive, considerably absolutely. More than twice.
Yes.
But I don't listen to the music and hear, oh, geez, Will's good. Oh, it's a shame Simon wasn't a little bit better on the piano. Look, I don't get that. In my mind, there's no debate. It sounds like three amazing music minds collaborating. Tell us a bit about, how do you feel? How do you feel when you look around and you see Will there and like the experience of those guys? What is it like for you?
Unbelievable. Every second of it was pure bliss, really. From the second, I mean, I've known Wolfgang for a couple of years now. We've been playing since 2017, I think.
Yes.
And so I've gotten used to the situation of playing with, he's been one of my heroes.
Oh yeah.
Also, and he still is, and that won't change. But I've been playing with him for quite a while, so that's become not normal. It's still a huge privilege, but
yes,
you get used to it a little bit, to the situation. But when Will entered the studio, I was in shock. I couldn't believe he was actually there.
Yeah.
And every time then you start playing and everything feels great and you kind of lose yourself in the music. Yeah. And then every time I looked up and he was sitting right next to me, I stopped playing for a second, because I couldn't believe it. It was always like a little electricity shock going through me.
But from the listeners
guy here,
from the listener's point of view, and I really encourage people when they listen to these tracks to shut their eyes and just get their own minds around that there is a phenomenal age difference there. And like, you know, if you think back to the jazz greats of whatever era, most of those bands, whether it was Miles Davis or Charlie Parker or Dizzy Gillespie, they were largely players of the same age and same experience when you think about it. Like jazz is always a handing down legacy. So, you know, the greats. But when you think of those bands, you know, those amazing recordings, many a time the orchestra and the small groups were largely people who had grown up together and played.
Right.
So I want to dig back. I actually want to, for my own enjoyment and for my listeners' enjoyment, I want to try and work out how you've got so good in a relatively short period of time. How did it all start for you? What can you remember your first moment when you were when music got you and you were interested in music? Maybe not playing an instrument, but maybe it was one and the same. What's your first memory of, hello, I want to get involved in this, or I'm enjoying it?
Yes. I think there were two key moments. I think I can say that. The first one, I don't really remember it because I think I was 2 years old, but it's been told to me that I still have some vague pictures in my head, but my dad's a drummer.
Okay.
And I was at a concert he did with his band back then, and I think after sound check, he sat me down behind the drum kit, and I was just banging away on it. My foot didn't reach the bass drum pedal, and
that's right.
Yeah. But still, somehow, even though I couldn't reach it, the bass drum really, really spoke to me. I don't know why. That sound, that deep round tone, and then when it came time for making a Christmas wish, it was very clear that it had to be a bass drum.
Oh, just a bass drum. You were happy, just give us a bass drum.
Yeah, not even a drum kit or anything, just that.
Yeah.
And I was already banging on pots and pans everywhere and tapping on stuff, and so I got that bass drum, a little from a little children's drum kit, and that just started it, and I added some pots to it, and made myself a little drum kit. And then for every birthday and for every bigger holiday, or for Christmas, I got one more drum. And I found out later that my parents had bought the entire kit. But they gave me one drum at a time, which was actually
drip
fantastic.
Feeding the presents.
Yes, absolutely. So I really got to know all those individual instruments, and then I just played all the time. And at some point I started taking drum lessons for the first time, I think when I was 4.
Yep.
I was always making music at home. My mom is also very musical. She plays the recorder, of course, and she used to play guitar and bass in the school band.
Okay.
And my dad's, as I said, he's a drummer, and he plays guitar, and he has great ears and everything. So there was always music around the house.
Yes.
And I of course, my parents tried to make me listen, or not make me listen, but they played me children's songs and children's music, and I didn't really want to hear anything about that.
No.
I was just interested in my dad's music collection, and that was all blues and blues rock, classic rock,
great,
Beatles, everything pretty much.
Modern music of the time, or creative
absolutely.
music. Yeah,
absolutely. But mostly blues, actually.
Okay.
Lots of British blues, Eric Clapton, John Mayall.
Yes.
And that was all I was interested in. Just
so when
music.
Did a chordal instrument come into your life? Like you obviously drums was the first attraction.
Right.
When did you
that was the second key moment. That was when my dad bought a concert DVD of John Mayall and the Blues Breakers.
Right.
I think it was a 2003 concert recording, John Mayall's 70th birthday concert. Huge thing in Liverpool. And And when I watched that for the first time, there was a guy named Tom Canning from Los Angeles, who I later found out was Al Jarreau's piano player and musical
director or whatever, music director.
And collaborator.
Yep.
But I didn't know that back then, obviously. And he was playing Hammond B3 on that gig, and I had no idea what that instrument was.
No.
But the moment I heard the first note coming from him and that instrument, I was hooked. It was over for me. That moment right there, I knew what I wanted to do.
The organ first before the piano.
Absolutely.
I just want to come back to that, but I'd like to play for our audience. Look, probably I thoroughly enjoy both of your albums, but I do a fair bit of driving here weekly, probably a 2-hour drive every week, and so I love having music in the car.
Yeah.
And when I put on track 9 of your About Time album, which is When It Hits You,
right,
I just turned the volume up. I thought, oh, this is right touching my heart. So let's have a listen. This is classic grooving organ. Is it a B3 or what did you use on When It Hits You?
Yeah, it's my A100, but it's
similar,
technically the same. Yeah.
Let's just let our audience have a listen to a couple of minutes of When It Hits You.
Yes.
Okay, Simon, so what a wonderful sound on the organ. I got interested in the saxophone. I started on the guitar when I was 8, and I was probably about 15 or 16 when I first got interested in the saxophone. And one of the first players that grabbed me was Stanley Turrentine.
Oh,
And he was big in the era of the organ trios. I think his then wife, Shirley Scott, was a famous organ player. Yeah. So one of the first things that got me interested in the saxophone was hearing the beautiful sound of Stanley Turrentine in that groove of the the organ trios. So you said you heard that player, the one player, play a note on that. But who were some of your other influences? You must have then started exploring other organ
That's
players.
right.
Who's some of the players that really got to you when you started looking?
Well, at first I was still pretty much only listening to blues players,
Okay.
and then at some point I went to a show in my hometown with my dad.
Yes.
There was an organ player by the name of Barbara Dennerlein. She's a jazz organ player.
Yep.
Plays incredible, pedal bass and everything.
Yes.
And I didn't know her before, but when I heard that show or that concert and the music she played, that was my segue into jazz music. That opened up a whole new world for me. And then
yes.
found out about Jimmy Smith, obviously.
Yes.
And just so many. I think the most influential for me were Dr. Lonnie Smith.
Yes.
He was just the greatest to me. So soulful and just a beautiful player and beautiful human being. Also, I had the pleasure of playing with him twice and meeting him a couple of times. He was just amazing. And then Larry Golding's is a huge favorite of mine. Jimmy McGriff.
Yes.
Jack McDuff, obviously, and then Joe DiFrancesco. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
Amazing player. He just set the bar for all organ players.
So when did the additional influence of acoustic piano, electric piano, when did you start exploring beyond the organ?
Well, I started taking piano lessons when I was 8.
Okay.
And because my parents said that, if you want to play keyboards and organ, that's great, but maybe it's a good idea to take, just classical piano lessons. And I did. With a great teacher. She was the organ player in our church, back in my home village, and I did that until I was 18, I think, till I finished school.
Yes.
And that was fantastic, and it was really important in my musical development. But I was never, I never practiced classical music. When I got home, the only thing I wanted to do was play blues and jazz and everything. And before I started taking those lessons, I had already, learned blues scales and all that stuff by ear. So first 3-4 years, everything was, I just sat in my room and tried to figure stuff out, listening to records and playing along and see what fits, what doesn't. So it was still pretty much organ, or I was, focused on organ and keyboards. And then I think I joined my the first big band that I played in. And that's when someone, a good friend of mine, recommended, for me to take some jazz piano lessons.
Okay.
And that's pretty much when I started to get really interested in doing more piano stuff.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the gigs that I was playing were all organ gigs.
Yes.
And that actually, it changed years later. That took a long time. And now it's pretty much, all balanced,
balanced out. So how old would have you been when you got a bit serious about the acoustic piano and the challenges of the acoustic piano?
I think that would have been 2012. Yes, that's when one of my mentor, Frank Chastanier, he's an incredible piano player and organ player as well. He came into my life because I think I won a little jazz award in the Netherlands.
Okay.
We lived very close to the border, and there was a lot of jazz going on there.
Yeah.
And I had a duo with a great friend of mine, drummer Jerome Cardinals, and we were playing, in the local clubs and little gigs, but mostly in the Netherlands. And at some point there was a little jazz award, for young talents.
Yes.
And I won that one in 2011, and one of the or part of that award was a master class with a professional piano player.
Great.
And that guy, I had no idea that he was going to really change my life. He was the piano and organ player of the WDR Big Band. I'm not sure if you've heard of
I've
them.
heard of those. Yes, great band. Yes,
fantastic band, and they're based in Cologne, where I'm now, which is close to my hometown.
Yes,
and the deal was that he was going to come to our home and give me a master class for maybe 2 hours or so.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
that's it. But he must have seen something in me, and I think it was also because he had a similar start in music. He also started on the organ.
Yeah.
And he, after that 1.5 hour or 2 hour session that we did, he said, I want to keep doing this. So once a month or every 2 months, he actually came to our home and taught me. And he just turned everything upside down. He really.
So he was teaching you, not only the piano, but maybe a more advanced theory than you had struck before that, or what was it? Or was it mainly just the technique of the piano?
It was technique, but it was also a lot of things that I had never thought about. We never touched the organ because he said, "Okay, you're doing this anyway. This is not a problem.
Yeah,
but let's get to the piano and work on that." And we did a lot of classical music. And he was the first teacher that I really, started practicing for hours a day.
Wow.
I had never done that before.
Okay.
I wish I had now, but at least.
So you were saying that you obviously had a natural talent, but then there was this teacher that you came in touch with that for whatever reason sparked your interest in, hey, I want to get better. I want to delve into this and get better.
Yes.
Look, this is a good segue because I want to play just a little piece of a track of yours called Summer in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing on that track is you are recording with another absolute living legend of jazz, Randy Brecker on trumpet.
That's right.
Now, I'm sure you're aware that Randy's done just about everything he can possibly do in jazz.
Unbelievable.
And again, if I can trust Google, I think Randy is reported to be 76 years old now. And at the time at the time he recorded this solo, he would have been 74. So obviously, Randy missed the memo that said playing trumpet is extremely difficult after 50 years. Because if we listen, it didn't get to him. But let's come in. We'll come in about halfway through Randy Brecker's trumpet solo, which is this great fiery trumpet solo. And what I really love is how you respond. So you've got a guy who at the time was 74 years old, just nailing it on the trumpet. And you come in, you must have been 22 or 23, directly following Randy Brecker with a really, I was going to say aggressive, but I guess it is aggressive. His solo was aggressive. Is it a Wurlitzer piano? I know you've got a beautiful Fender Rhodes behind you. What on that track?
That's a Rhodes. Yeah,
it's a Rhodes.
That was a Mark I Rhodes. Yeah.
Okay, because it's just you're cranking it. Let's have a listen to a little bit.
It was a dirty Rhodes.
It's a great sound. So let's have a listen to a little bit of Summer in Berlin. The great Randy Brecker and Simon Oslender on the Fender Rhodes piano. So Simon, what's your approach in a song like that when you've obviously wrote the song and I assume you were aware that you were going to invite Randy to do a trumpet solo. How did that come out? How did it come about that you ended up with Randy Brecker playing a solo on that song?
Actually, I have to say, when I composed that song, I heard Randy's sound immediately, because there's countless songs that Randy has played on that go into that direction, that kind of Latin funk with kind of intricate changes. And that was just, I thought it had to be him. But I never dared to ask him. I had only played with him once and just met him briefly.
Yes.
And I just didn't, I didn't think he would want to do that.
Yes.
But then again, it was Wolfgang Haffner who said, "Man, just ask him. Just ask him. The worst thing that can happen is a no."
Yes, that's right.
Wouldn't be bad,
Yeah.
So initially we had recorded the tune without trumpet.
Okay.
I think there was a guitar solo, which was also fantastic, but I just kept hearing Randy. And then I just wrote him an email and asked him whether he would want to do that. And a couple of minutes later, I had a capital yes on my screen. And that was
he does a lot of playing with that WR big band, doesn't he? Or what is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe he'd heard of you through that or something. I don't know. Or
yeah,
but you've sort of answered my question there, because I wanted to ask you. You have answered my question, that when a guest like that comes in, do you consciously write for that guest? And I think what you're saying, you actually, it maybe subconsciously, you had planted Randy Brecker's trumpet in there. I don't know what would have happened if he said no. I suppose you just have to tweak the arrangement to whoever else wanted to do it. But that's another thing, as I say, if we think of the music mind, it's my impression is it's ageless and age, depending on how hard the individual people have worked. You are a wonderful example of it doesn't necessarily equate to spending 50 years of professional playing to sound like, to have that level of experience. It's intriguing, because certainly in the classical world, if you want to be a concert master on violin, if you look at what the Asian cultures do, from 3 years on, if you want to be doing, if you haven't had a crack at it at 3, sorry, you just try something else, take up the harmonic or something, but you're not going to be that. And it's largely a hard work thing. But I just want to go back. So you're saying there was this time where you got dead set serious about playing. Yeah. But has it largely been fun? Like, has the idea of practice just been, I'm just going to play and yes, you're practicing? Or has it felt like work? Has it felt like hard work, or are you largely just attracted to just playing?
Yes, absolutely. I think I can say that if it comes down to actually making music, I've never worked a day in my life.
Right.
It's never worked for me. Of course, there's a lot of, stuff that I do outside of actually playing,
yes,
technique, booking my own band, and also, of course, some practicing that can be very, very boring in a way, but
yes,
you got to do it. But in the end, I know what it's good for, or I know that it's going to help me get where I want to go,
Yes.
So it has never felt like work to me. Not really. No.
And I think I hear that. I think I hear that in your playing. It's just the love of the music. I actually want to play another example of you following another, world-class soloist, and this time the jazz saxophone legend Bill Evans, of Miles Davis band fame, great tenor and soprano sax player. Now, you've got a fantastic track called Rooftop Party, where, similar to the Randy Brecker experience, Bill does just an outstanding tenor sax solo, like a fiery solo. Right, and then you come in, I think this time you come in on acoustic piano. Is that right? Do you follow his?
That's correct. Yes.
And that's interesting of itself, because, after Randy Brecker, you're just, almost destroying the Fender Rose piano in a good way. But I love, and we'll let our listeners hear this, but I love how you sort of almost come back, from that screaming altissimo and the growl on the saxophone, all that energy, you sort of counteract that energy with a beautiful melodic acoustic piano. So then it does generate some heat, but it's not an automatic boxing match
Right,
where
right.
you know you just take on that. Let's have a little bit of listen to the great Bill Evans on tenor saxophone, followed by Simon on acoustic piano on a great track called Rooftop Party. Did you write that track with having with Bill in mind at the time? You wrote that with him on sax.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the melody on that track was, I think, again, subconsciously influenced. Now I know where it comes from, but it's, you know, Bill has a lot of tunes that have this very, very distinctive melody writing. It's very interesting, and I hear it on his tunes that go in a little bit in that, you know, bluegrass direction. You know, he's done that Soulgrass album and
Yes,
that stuff, and those melodies have a very, very special vibe to them in a way, and I think that was what influenced this song. And again, it was, I just heard him on that track.
I think that's
And
really
again, I didn't dare to ask him, you know.
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
said
but
yes.
well, I think our listeners, things they're picking up is don't be scared to ask, because it is so true.
No, absolutely
the worst
not.
thing that can happen is someone's just going to say, just ignore it, or
Absolutely.
I want to
That's
talk
true.
a little bit
Yeah.
now about, you've recorded your Peace of Mind album. It's so beautifully recorded. It's so beautifully in its own way orchestrated. But I notice on your website, you're about to head off and tour that album. Or are you currently touring it? Or I notice you've got some dates there around Germany.
That's right. We're actually starting rehearsals tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's going to be really interesting, because I haven't, you know, I'm going on tour with my regular trio with two great friends of mine, fantastic musicians, Hendrik Smock on drums and Klaus Fischer on bass.
Okay.
And that's a fantastic trio. We've been playing together for a couple of years, and but it's going to be very interesting because the vibe of the album is, of course, very special because of the connection, you know, with Wolfgang and Will.
Yeah,
that's a very, you know, distinctive sound, and I'm really looking forward to hearing, you know, the new version of that, because you know, we're not going to try to play it like it is on the record. That would be pointless, you know.
It's quite an intimate album, your Peace of Mind album. I guess your About Time album is more, I don't know, to me it's more commercial or more maybe a different audience. But Peace of Mind, at the clubs in Europe where you're playing, are the audience, is it generally a listening environment, or are they looking to get up and dance and get involved and woohoo and all of that sort of stuff? What's it like, you know?
It depends. There are different clubs, of course, but most jazz venues have listening audiences, actually, which is great.
Because I think
really
that album demands a listening audience.
Yes.
And also with you as a, and I love your website sort of sets out your different roles. You're a touring recording artist, you're a piano player, acoustic piano player, you're electric piano player, your keyboards with your synthesizer, and many of your tracks on both of these albums sort of, you're in there everywhere. There's a little faint bit of organ in the background and a bit of synth there, and you're a composer. Just on the acoustic piano, and I asked Robin A. Smith this because I had the chance to, what a wonderful acoustic piano player. And I sort of said to him, my instruments, I'll pick up a guitar and I can take my guitar with me and play the flute or the sax. And it's, whilst I'm a victim of the PA system, I'm actually my starting sound source I carry with me. But I'm assuming that unless you're Elton John or Billy Joel or Horowitz, you don't really get the chance to say, I want a Steinway at that club. No. You are at the mercy of whatever is, or do you consciously avoid the acoustic piano when you're touring? What do you do there? Mostly. How do you deal with that? Yeah, okay.
At first, I wanted to have a grand piano wherever possible.
Yes.
But then at some point, it was getting on my nerves that it was just different every day. Sometimes a club would say, "Oh, it was tuned last week, should be fine," stuff like that. And And at some point, I just said, "Okay, no, we can't unless we start playing concert halls. Where the piano is always being maintained and taken care of. I can't do this."
You are a Yamaha artist now, I notice on your website. What does that actually mean for you as a musician? What does that entail?
Well, Yamaha has different divisions within their company. So I'm not a Yamaha piano artist. I'm I'm very fortunate to be a Yamaha synthesizers artist, which includes all the the stage pianos and workstations, synthesizers, all that stuff, which is fantastic because that has also helped me find a solution to that piano problem, because now I have the same setup every night. I take my keyboards with me.
Yes.
I have a great stage piano, the YC series.
Okay.
And a synthesizer on top, the Montage series.
Okay.
And then I usually also take along an organ or a keyboard with a good organ sound played through a Leslie speaker.
Yes.
That's pretty much my setup. And before that, I was always changing stuff, and I had different brands, different models of stage pianos, and I was never really happy. And now I have that same setup. Of course it will never replace a grand piano,
no,
or a Rhodes, but it's I can make music on it, and it speaks to me, and it feels right,
and the consistency of the sound, and exactly. Yamaha as a company, one of my qualifications is I have a master's degree in business, and I always felt that I would love to give back, as an alumni or whatever. My recommendation would be, hey, guys, do a case study on Yamaha, because whether it's a whippersnipper or an outboard motor, a concert grand piano, a trombone, a trumpet, they might not make the best of whatever they're doing in the world, but they're in the top 5 regardless. I'd argue no matter, you might like Steinway more than Yamaha, but you can't knock them out of the top 5. It's the same on my instruments. I play some old vintage Selmer saxophones, but my default sax, if mine was stolen or lost, I'm not going to go looking for another one of them. I just buy the latest 82Z custom Yamaha saxes. They're absolutely beautiful. And I just think it's it's wonderful that you are associated with Yamaha, because I think it's a huge honor, and they give back. I think I love their statement, making waves. I think that's beautiful. The Yamaha, making waves. Talk about making waves. That's what they are doing. And I just want to have a listen. Let our audience listen to another track that features your piano playing, "Better Times," which is track 11 from Peace of Mind. This is just a beautiful piece of music, and one of my favourite artists. And I suppose, being an Australian, I'm loyal to Australia, but I think one of our greatest exports musically to the world is Tommy Emmanuel, the acoustic guitar by Tommy Emmanuel.
Absolutely.
Just amazing. And when I hear "Better Times," and I said to Robin A. Smith, there was a track he wrote that I thought, and I'll say the same to you, that when I heard Better Times, I thought if Tommy Emmanuel was a piano player instead of a guitar player, he doesn't play the piano, I could hear Peace of Mind as being a song that Tommy would compose on the piano. It's got the contemporary chords, it's got the beautiful touch, the beautiful harmonies. If I close my eyes and change the sound of the piano to a guitar, I'm thinking that's a Tommy song. So that's a real credit to you, mate.
Compliment.
So let's have a listen to Better Times from the Peace of Mind album.
I did study jazz and pop piano in Rotterdam, Netherlands, for 2.5 years, and then I quit because I couldn't take it. I had a great time there, and I learned a lot. I have to say that.
Yeah,
great school and everything, but I was already touring a lot. That's a different story. But in the end, if I kind of compare what I've learned, there studying at jazz conservatory and with all my teachers, I think in the end, most of the stuff that was really important in my development really came from just my interest, and then me looking up stuff and trying to get into things.
Yes,
that was always a lot easier for me in a way.
So reading music, if a great singer came to you and they had a piano part, where do you sit in that? Are you an adequate accompanist, or would you say that's not really me?
Hard to say. I think I can do it, but I'm not a great reader. I'm not really a great reader. I can I can do lead sheets and stuff like that, obviously.
Yes.
And if someone gives me the music in advance, I just need a little time, and then I'm okay. But there's so many people who can just read, sheet music like they read a book, and I cannot do that.
Yeah. Do you ever stop and think about, I'm not thinking about having a short life, but do you ever stop and think where you want to be in 25 years time? Think of where you are now, or is it a day at a time? Are you just taking your music one step at a time, or do you have some goals?
Yeah. I don't have a big plan or anything. No, I'm just trying to do what makes me happy and learn every day and see where it goes. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
We have a lot of younger listeners and viewers to the podcast, and I'm talking high school age students who love their music. They're doing it in that, but they're at that difficult time where they have to make a decision. What am I going to do beyond school? Am I going to a college or university? Am I going to study to be a dentist, or am I going to take a gamble? I love my music. Am I going to go to a music college and come out with I shudder to say it, but a performance degree versus a teaching degree? Because, a teaching degree, you're always going to get a job somewhere. It might not be what you like, but the performance degree, I don't think Wynton Marsalis would ask for, for your copy of your university
Right.
performance degree. He either likes how you play or he doesn't.
Or he doesn't, right? Yeah.
What, now you're, I know at your age, a school age guy who's 15 would probably think you're as old as a volcano, but you are remotely within their age group, and you've sort of made some decisions, and you're building a great career for yourself. What sort of advice do you have to someone who's 10 years younger than you, who loves their music but is just trying to toss up, is a career in music a viable career? What's been your experience? And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think a lot of people would really love to hear what you think about that.
Right. Well, my opinion is always, if you love it 100%, then there's always going to be a place for you in the music scene, and you will find a way to make it happen,
Yes.
But you really need to put everything you have into it, and you need to love it so much. And if that's the case, then go for it by all means.
Yes.
And I think you'll find out very soon, if that's the case. Or of course you'll know, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, it's not getting easier. Music business is not getting easier for anyone.
So Simon, is there any special projects that you're working on or that are in the near future that you'd like to tell the people about, things to be looking out for, or what are you up to, I suppose, in the near future?
Let's see. So first, there's, of course, the Peace of Mind tour.
Yes.
Which will be in Germany exclusively for now. I hope to extend that a little more. Maybe one day we can come to Australia. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I was in Melbourne once for a week with that was my first gig with Bill Evans, actually. That was the first time we played together. That was good.
Yeah. Well, Melbourne's a very music city.
Yeah,
in Australia, probably as far as live music goes, it's probably the pick of the city.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. There's a couple recording things that I'm doing. I don't know if I'm already allowed to talk about them.
Oh, that's okay.
Because yesterday was 2 days ago was a very happy day for me, because an album got released that I played on earlier this year. And that was actually one of pretty much my biggest musical dream coming true, because I got to play on an album with Steve Gadd, which was wow, unbelievable. Steve Gadd, Eddie Gomez on bass, and Ronnie Cuber on baritone.
On baritone, wow.
Yes. That was and that was also with the WDR big band.
Yes, that's called, incredible.
It's called Center Stage, and it's I think it's a great album. So
people need to be on the lookout for that. Just
Absolutely.
Today and just yesterday, you sent through a great. I invited you to just, film something on piano, and you did a beautiful track. And just today, I've managed to put a concert flute part over, and I think we've got something really, really good there in the spirit of what this is all about. Where we're just not only sharing a discussion, but creating a little bit of music that's unique to the podcast. So we will go out with that. But before we do that, I want to play a little bit of Warehouse, which is the opening track from your About Time album. What a wonderful track. And after that, we'll do our collaboration. So thanks so much for your time, Simon. You're doing amazing things in music, and you're an inspiration to be where you're at 24. I think you're an inspiration to those 14 and 15-year-olds that they might have to work a little bit harder. And you're certainly an inspiration to the older generation like me, that it's just great to know that there's people coming up that are just, carrying the flame forward in a wonderful way. It's really a credit to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. What a pleasure.
Thank you, Simon. What a genuine honour it was to interact with Simon Oslender, one of the true young lions of the European jazz scene. At just 24 years of age, he's got 2 great albums available, and I recommend that you go to his website at www.simonoslender.com and check out the many videos and entertaining clips that he has there, as well as the opportunity to purchase both Peace of Mind and About Time, 2 fantastic instrumental albums. As always, I invited Simon to send me over a clip playing whatever he wanted to, something that I could interact and collaborate with him on, as I do with all of my podcast guests. Simon sent over a fantastic, funky piano part, and I've put a concert flute lead to it, and we've just called it the Piano Flute Groove. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been a real thrill to present it to you. Bye for now.